Recently, I've had a couple of interactions with people and with groups of people where I have mentioned a single word, which I thought was rather simple, then I realized that the word kind of doesn't exist in the English language, or if it does, it's really obscure. And this is a single word that can help people, I would think, help people achieve enlightenment faster. And the strange thing about it is when I talk about this concept mentioned by this word, um, it's such a simple thing, and yet people have trouble really grasping it. Might be something I'm losing sight of. As I get more familiar with spiritual work, these concepts become easier and easier, and I begin to lose sight of how difficult some of these things might be for those who are just hearing about them for the first time, and how helpful these things can be if we really exert some effort to understand them. Now, that single word that I mentioned, which I thought was so helpful, which can be helpful to you if you understand it, that single word is affrontedness. You might try to guess what affrontedness means before I say what it is or before you look it up. Okay. And in fact, I was in a session with somebody and they were very tech savvy, and they looked it up in an online dictionary. And I wasn't really happy with the online dictionary's definition because it was so abstract. And so when I define this term, I think it's really important to, when you work with words like this, it's really important to get at the concrete imagery that these words evoke. Okay, rather than just go with some kind of abstract definition like, oh, the state of being offended or something like that. Well, what does that mean to be offended? See, affrontedness really has an image that's associated with it. And so what you have is, let's say there's a war going on, and when there's a war, there's usually a front. And the infantry goes up to the front. Well, that's the way we used to fight wars anyway. The infantry goes up to the front, and they're fighting on the front lines on one side, and then the bad guys the other guys are fighting on the other side, and that's the front. And of course, one side might claim more territory, and then the front moves. It's kind of like American football, isn't it? American football is very violent, very warlike, right? So anyway, wherever the front moves, that's where the front of the war is. And what the experience that we have at the front line, the feeling that we get as we look at the enemy, that we can call affrontedness. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about affrontedness is that it's kind of become the norm for so many, many people. And really, it isn't really our normal mode of operation. Being affronted is really not something that our biology has evolved to do necessarily, but somehow we have evolved, maybe culturally and habitually, into a state of mind that is continuously affronted. Okay, you could say offended, whatever that means, right? But affronted is much a stronger word because it basically involves putting up a front or putting up a face. And so when something's in your face, you are now being affronted by this thing. And that sense of, being assaulted by a threat, let's say, that's the sense of affrontedness. Okay. And for many of us, this has become our default mode of operation, where the moment we wake up, it's like, it's another world, another day of one damn thing after another. First, there's this problem affronting me. Now okay, what's next? There's another problem. Okay, what's the next problem? Now I have to drive to work. Oh my God, traffic jam, another problem. What's next? This is not the way we need to operate. And yet somehow many of us have fallen into this affrontedness habit. And it's the way that we proceed throughout our day. And the only relief we get, I would hope, is when we go to sleep at night. But lo and behold, in our dreams, the affrontedness continues. That's kind of the nature of dreams anyway, okay? To basically present you with scenarios of affrontedness. And then really the only release you have is during dreamless sleep. Thank God. If you can reach dreamless sleep, whereas many of us are too stressed out to even do that, or we haven't taken proper control of our sleep cycles, or we haven't restored our sleep cycles to the way they were before electric lighting came in. I did release a video about that. Anyway, but you don't necessarily need to achieve deep sleep to avoid this habitual mode of affrontedness. Okay, and so but how do you do that? It's probably better to notice how affrontedness arises to begin with. Because the sad thing about it is that affrontedness has an on switch, but it doesn't really seem to have an off switch. Yeah. The nice thing is that magic comes along and deliberately confronts us with our affrontedness. Okay, so as I've gone over before, when you do banishing ritual work, what are you doing essentially? You're drawing a circle around yourself. It's kind of like drawing a line in the sand, a line in the sand against the enemy. This is the front of my war against reality. And everything outside my circle is demons and darkness, and everything inside my circle is light and goodness. And this is the side of, I'm on the side of light, and everything outside my circle is on the side of darkness. Something like that. Anyway, so it's asserting that sort of model that already presents to us the fundamental model of the unenlightened mind. Okay, this is the mind that is affronted by everything, constantly suffering because it's one damn thing after another. So why would I deliberately draw a magic circle around myself to intensify this sense of affrontedness? Okay, so those of you who have already seen previous videos, you know how this works, okay? But basically, you're now drawing attention to this affrontedness scenario deliberately so you can see what it's doing to you. You can see it more clearly. And then, presumably then, you begin to notice, this ain't working. I don't want to do this affrontedness thing anymore. What are my options? How do I stop this from continuing? And so we have all these systems of magic, supposedly that are based on the magic circle, drawing circles around yourself. And whatever exists outside your circle is the evil and the darkness, hence the serpent. You have to see that snake wrapping around the circle there, the kind of lurking out there, waiting to devour you with your own mortality. Okay. Now, the serpent as the Ouroboros, or the serpent as your magic circle, represents more than just a monster that's a threat. Okay. It represents both mortality and immortality at the same time. The sphere of Saturn, it represents a lot of things. Okay. But among those, it also represents the animal that has killed more humans than any other animal that we know of, and that is the snake. Okay, that's mostly true. Actually, mosquitoes have probably killed more people than snakes have. But when it comes to a more like violent and obvious death from an animal, snakes pretty much top the list. They bite you, poisonous, you die. Okay, and so snakes are really embedded deeply in our cell memory as dangerous, frightening, representing death. Okay, and so snakes are really good images for working with demons and fears of all kinds of things. Fear of dying, fear of mortality, fear of extinction, disappearing. And also here in the magic circle, you see outside the magic circle, presumably the magician stands inside with the hexagrams. And then outside the magic circle are the pentagrams, okay? And also the triangle of manifestation, which is up at the very top there. Presumably that's to the east. Yeah, that's to the east, okay? And it's put in the east because that's where the sun rises. That's where things arise or appear in your perception, okay? So in your theater of the imagination, new experiences can be said, at least symbolically, to appear in the east. And they sort of, process themselves around you and then disappear behind you into the west and sync with the sun, sort of, okay? At least in conceptually, anyway, symbolically. Now, these images of the pentagram and the triangle, these images, we can put all kinds of, mathematical meanings and correspondences upon them. But if you've been working with these things a long time, they're much more visceral and simple than you might expect. Okay, so if you are standing in the middle of your magic circle and there's a triangle out there to the east where something can approach you, it comes up over the horizon and comes at you, right? That triangle sort of represents that road that is coming at you. All right, so when a new and unknown phenomenon is appearing in your life, it's going to be approaching you in some scary way. It's like, I haven't experienced this before. What is it? It's starting to appear, right? And you'll notice that it tends to come at you in this sort of, like it's on a road or an avenue that approaches you. And lo and behold, we have this sort of triangle of manifestation thing going on. So that's how the spirit is sort of now coming at you. It's coming at you live, right? Okay, so triangle of manifestation, there's other meanings to it which are very profound, okay? But let's just deal with this experientially right now and notice how inside your imaginary sphere of protection, let's say you are one of your ancient ancestors, prehistoric ancestors, you're out on the savannah, tall grass all around you, and there could be a lion lurking in the grass in any direction. You're by yourself, okay? That's usually not a good idea to wander around on the savannah alone, because wandering around alone is a good signal to a predator that you're easy pickings. Okay, so normally that's what predators go for. They go for the young, the helpless, and the alone. Yeah, so if you're out there with others, you're less likely to be attacked. So if you're out on the savannah by yourself, and there's tall grass everywhere, you don't know if there are any lions there, something could come charging at you at any moment. And that's a scenario that has repeated itself, many times in our evolutionary past. And so we tend to have it burned into our cell memory, like, all kinds of trouble can come charging at us at any moment in the form of a lion or a wolf or a cave bear, who knows? Okay, and so we kind of have all these vectors of attack pointing in at us, or these roadways converging in upon us, where we can expect to see danger approaching at any moment. This is our stress response ready to go off so that we can either fight or run away or freeze and play dead, which good luck with that. Okay. And this is something that we still have going on today, and we will respond even to abstract threats like an approaching deadline as though it is some kind of predator. We have the same stress response versus a bill in the mail as we have to a predator that's stalking us. It's not really any different. Okay, and the interesting thing is that especially nowadays, the way that we consume social media, that stress response is constantly being triggered. And in some respects, we go after that because we are habitually relying upon the stress response to save us again and again and again. Okay? That's not a good situation to be in, because when the stress response takes over, it shuts down higher brain function. And it drastically simplifies everything around you in the world to simply fight or flight mode of existence. Okay? So the energy, the blood flow to your higher brain functions is removed, and just the lower brain functions are now active, fighting, running away, maybe eating something sometimes, but just the basic functions are now operational. So if there's a predator chasing you, let's say you're in a monster movie and the monster's chasing you, you have to remember, like, you run to your car, but you're so stressed out, you can't even figure out which key opens the door. That's how much the stress response dumbs you down, okay? This is back when we used to have keys that open car doors, instead of keyless entry. Oh well. Oh, look at that. Now we have this sort of roadway that's approaching you, the triangle of manifestation. Not only that, but we have this sort of pentagram. Oh, this pentagram inside there in the shape of a person. So what you can even see that the pentagrams drawn outside your circle, essentially, or around your circle, these are essentially like personifying symbols. So whatever's out there can now take on some kind of human form. Okay, you can look at the pentagram that way. Of course, there's all kinds of elaborate ways of looking at pentagrams, like gematria and things like that. But let's just go back to the basics of what the pentagram actually does. Like, it's an abstract representation of a human figure. Could be scary. Could be also a hero come to save you, like an angel. Okay, like the archangels. Okay, remember that good spirits and evil spirits, both good and evil spirits, are manifestations of evolutionary trauma. Okay, the evil spirits are simply manifestations of predators or traumatic situations, like a bottomless pit. Okay, or a cave bear that's going to eat you, or a serpent. But also angels are like rescuing influencers or consoling influences. So, I'm in trouble, and somebody's going to come to rescue me, or give me some good news. Finally, that's the angels that come, and like the angel of the Annunciation. Good news, you're pregnant. I'm not sure that's good news, but the angels come with good news, or they come and basically save you. So even in that sense, an angel is also associated with evolutionary trauma. In that sense, angels are not necessarily a good thing. Because, so if you're invoking angels on a regular basis, you're essentially invoking the problem that they rescue you from. They don't come without the problem. They come with that problem. So surrounding yourself with angels to protect you is going to evoke that problem into existence, whatever problem they're associated with. All right? There's really not any kind of imagery that's going to be purely good. And if we invert the pentagram, there's no escape there, because here also this could be a manifestation of trauma. Apparently, many of the animals that caused us a lot of grief in our evolutionary past had horns. Just ask anybody who's had to deal with a water buffalo. Probably the most dangerous herd animal on the earth. And I think horned animals have given us lots of trouble because we would try to domesticate them, and they still get difficult to manage and might gore you to death. Oops. Right? And also we would try to hunt these things, and if they were being difficult, they might try to stab you with their horns. Okay. But it's not only the horns, it's also the ears. Pentagrams The inversion of the pentagram was I know that's in the Golden Dawn system, at least a little bit, where I know that MacGregor Mathers did mention using inverted pentagrams. I tend to view pentagrams as figures that cannot be inverted. I know that's kind of silly because I have an inverted pentagram right here on the page, on the slide, right? How do I mean that? In the Golden Dawn, when you do divination via tarot cards, in the original Golden Dawn, they tended to say, we don't do inverted card definitions. Okay, so whenever you do a tarot card spread, you lay down all the cards and you always lay them right side up. Top. In other words, if they come out upside down, you simply turn them right side up. Okay. I tend to like that interpretation because to entertain the reverse definitions of tarot cards tends to make you view the universe dualistically. Everything has a good face and an evil face. Okay, you can see how that sort of good against evil now is being encouraged by that system. And I much prefer magical symbols just to be magical symbols. They're not good or evil, they just are. So when I turn over a tarot card, it's like, this just is. This is not good or evil. So I'm not saying to use the reverse, like if you use upside down tarot interpretations in your tarot spreads, that's fine. But you must keep in mind that you are now essentially invoking a dualistic universe around you into appearance. Okay, you're basically entering a dualistic type universe where, right side up is good and upside down is evil. Okay, so I tend to view the pentagram the same way. It's simply a figure that cannot be inverted. It's kind of like saying the reason it can't be inverted is because the topmost point of the pentagram. Let's go back to that. The topmost point of that pentagram represents spirit, and the other points represent the four elements. Each of the four lower points represents one of the four elements. And the idea is that spirit is the essence of them all, sort of like the boss of them all. Okay, and if I have no problem with turning it upside down, I just don't see that as evil. It's basically, okay, I could say that spirit is the higher principle, sort of a patriarchal view of it, or if spirit is the deeper principle. So more of a matriarchal way of looking at it. So if I invert the pentagram, that spirit angle at the bottom, that doesn't mean that the elements are now superior to it. The elements don't even exist, actually. The elements are simply the outer facets of the spirit. So yes, spirit is not an element. I know that in Wiccan circles they say, oh, the secret fifth element is spirit. Okay, yeah, fine. That's kind of a blind though. Spirit is not an element. It is the essence of the elements. They are all made of spirit. And we have other creatures who are notoriously dangerous to humans, or who have been, dogs, wolves. Essentially, especially if your ancestry is Europe, you might have some fear of dogs kind of embedded in your DNA. Okay, and so lo and behold, in our mythology of demons from hell, we have the dog-faced demons. Why are they dog-faced? Or why are they serpents? Why do they have horns? Okay, why do they have fangs? Because they are representations of the things that used to terrorize us when we were still being stalked and eaten as prey. Okay, and they are emblematic. Our stress response has evolved to respond to these images. Okay, and so if you want to get at your stress response and reprogram yourself, you can work with these images. Not only that, the stress response, when it kicks in, will spew forth these images at you, and you're like, oh my God, what is this stuff? Demons are real, I guess. I saw something with horns just now and glowing eyes, and well, what is all that stuff? When we sat around the campfire as hunter-gatherers, looked out into the darkness with the fire behind us, the glowing eyes of predators shone right back at us. Yeah. And when they were grabbing us and dragging us off to eat us, they used fangs and claws, which also demons have. And this is why creatures of imagination, or demons, appear in these strange chimeric forms. You see on the upper right we have the horned creature. I guess that's a goat. And then we have the dragon, which is sort of the crocodile. Crocodile is probably the most deeply embedded, frightening predator that we at least can, that still exists. A lot of predators, I think, that hunted humans wiped them out. Humans are very dangerous, yeah. Anything that stalks and kills humans, we tend to destroy it. There are no more saber-toothed tigers, and there are no more cave bears, possibly because we killed them all. And the many animals that remain they don't attack humans, not usually. Okay, the only animals left that attack humans are those that eat just about anything. Like polar bears will eat just about anything because they don't have much of a choice. And sharks as well, they will eat just about anything. And sharks don't even like us, by the way. We're not even on their menu for multiple reasons. But still, they're curious and they'll bite us just to see what we are. Even the snake is in that chimera there. See that? The snake is there. And of course the lion. The bat wings I find very curious. I'm wondering if there was some kind of predator that existed. There is some evidence apparently that some pterodactyl-like creatures may have actually survived into times when humans were that came into existence. So as we know, not all dinosaurs died out. All right. An example is the alligator. An alligator is actually a living dinosaur. They were already around back in the dinosaur days, and they are still around. And they're almost in the same form now as they were back then. They have barely changed at all. Whereas dinosaurs have changed a lot. Most of them turned into small birds. Yes, birds. Yeah, most of them were actually warm-blooded. All right. And so back to the idea of affrontedness. Okay, so somebody who habitually works with this banishing circle, like you banishing, and you're basically somebody who basically reinforces the duality between me inside my magic circle and the big bad universe outside my magic circle. If I continuously engage with that sort of default programming that kind of exists, it kind of came pre-installed. We evolved to live inside this sort of bubble of protection, this imaginary bubble of protection, and we're ready to either attack things that are coming at us or to run away from them, anything that threatens that bubble of safety that we have around us, right? So when we do this magic circle around us, we're simply plugging into the already existing programming that came installed when we were born, pretty much, right? Somebody who engages with that on a regular basis begins to get on a very friendly terms with all the things that frighten them. Okay, so the adept, somebody who has developed, a good deal of magical power, can be a sort of a disturbing person to be around because they don't have the fears quite in the same way that the rest of us do. There are many things they're just not afraid of anymore, okay? Or the fear is still there, but it doesn't control them. Okay, and so this can be kind of a disturbing person to be around. It can also be a very reassuring person to be around, because whatever crap you've got going on, whatever fears that you have going on that are making you into a difficult person to be with, because you're constantly freaked out by every little thing, or you're pissed off by this and that, constantly annoyed, right? They can tolerate that. They can see what's going on with you, and it doesn't really bother them very much. So that can be really reassuring. But this kind of person can also be a bit upsetting to you, because they don't have the same fears you do. So it's almost as though, well, I can't really count on them to join me in the fights that I have in my life. They're not gonna. They don't seem reliable. There's something wrong with them. They're much too relaxed. They're just going to let the world go to hell, aren't they? This person is much too relaxed. Okay, so on the one hand, a person like this can be nice to have around, because no matter what you show them, they can handle it. Okay, so you get that impression that they've already seen some of the ugly things within themselves, their own fears, right? And so when you freak out in front of them, they're like, oh yeah, I've seen that. That fear is quite normal to me, and I just totally understandable where that fear comes from. I can handle that, and they can help you with it. Okay, but then you can also notice, I really don't trust this person because they're not afraid of the same things I am. In fact, that seems dangerous to me, because they might go collude with all the monsters out there. Maybe they're in league with all the monsters out there. Yeah, maybe they're a communist or something like that, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because the adept can be seen as somebody who can be very helpful and very accommodating and very, very wise, very accepting, and not really troubled by anything. But because of that, they can also be seen as like an enemy sympathizer, somebody who is surrounded by a horde of demons and consorts with demons. It's kind of true. They do. They have a horde of demons around them, which they're okay with. Yeah, these demons, they have pretty much stared them down, and they have seen how these fears arise in them and how these desires arise, and they accept them and understand them, and in return, those demons basically serve them. They no longer jump in to the magic circle and possess them and make them automatically fight or run away. So that can be quite interesting, because so a magical adept still has the same demons that you have, but those demons are incapable of controlling that person anymore, for the most part. Okay, whereas you might see something dangerous, freak out and run away and cringe and hide under a barrel. They have a choice. They might hide under the same barrel with you, okay, but they won't really be that freaked out, or they will not run away. They will turn and face whatever it is that's going on, and be able to handle that fear, because that fear won't take them over. They really, an adept is not really capable of panicking anymore. The interesting thing about that is scenarios of fear are only one type of demon. There are also scenarios of desire. Fear and desire are what keep people unenlightened. Okay, so demons take frightening forms with fangs and horns and claws and glowing eyes, or frightening natural phenomena like lightning and fire, hurricane winds, things like that, also tornado winds. But they also take tempting forms, seductive forms. Okay, so also forms of desire, and an adept, a magical adept, has also faced down those demons, which means not only are they impervious to being taken over by a fear reaction, they're also impervious to being taken over by a desire reaction. Okay, if they want to be, they can go along with it. That's fine. Okay, and what that means is that an adept cannot really be scared out of his wits. Can still be scared, of course, but not to the point of being taken over by the fear response and panicking and losing control. Okay, supposedly. And they not only can they not be taken over by fear, but they cannot be taken over by desire either, which means that they cannot fall head over heels in love. Cannot be taken over by that desire response. Can they fall in love? Of course. Yeah, but it's more like they jump into love. They have a choice, and they're not going to be they cannot be unwittingly infatuated. Okay. The infatuation still arises, but it's like a demon that's out here. It says, oh my God, you want this so bad, don't you? Oh my God, it's just utterly irresistible. And they're like, I see what you're after there, and I see how you evolved to make me go after that. But I'm not really, in my essence, I'm not really moved by that phenomenon anymore. Okay. But you know what? Let's go play anyway. So we'll go do that. So this is a scenario where the adept shows the demon who's boss, and basically decides whether or not to play along with the drama that's going on. Once again, that can be very disturbing, because somebody who's not automatically taken over by desires the same way you are can be a bit disturbing. It's like, I can't figure this person out. What do they want? Because they don't seem to be controlled by anything. Okay? Is it even desirable to be a person who cannot fall head over heels in love? Just imagine what it's like to be free of all of these impulses, and yet still capable of playing along with them. What would that be like? Can't be taken over by these impulses anymore, and I can see right through them. If I want, I can go and enjoy and play, but I don't have to do it. Imagine that kind of freedom. Affrontedness. Why is this word so helpful then? Affrontedness is the one thing that you, as a student of magic, need to be on the lookout for. It is the only demon that actually exists. Okay, so let's clarify what that means. So if I am confronted with a scenario of desire, let's say I'm a heroin addict, and my dealer is on the corner, back when dealers used to hang out on corners, and I get that strong urge. It's like, oh no, like that is also a scenario of affrontedness. However you want to see that, okay? So I have the situation that is now in my face, and it is now drawing me to it. Okay, so it's in my face, it's now affronting me, and how am I going to respond to that? Now, my awareness of the duality of that situation, that thing over there is pulling me in somehow, okay, or it's motivating me to go over there. Or that thing over there is telling me that I am not good enough being over here without it. Okay, the same thing if a woman is in the checkout line and she sees these gorgeous models on the cover of, I don't know, Vogue magazine, and there's something about the, I don't know, the bacon diet or something like that on there, okay? She's like, oh, if only I had a figure like that. If only I were so beautiful like that, and maybe I should eat bacon like she does, so I can get that figure. That's also a scenario of affrontedness, okay, where that the image of the beautiful woman is being thrust in front of your face. It's in your face, right? It's affronting you. telling you somehow that you don't have this body and you need to do something now to get it. Okay, so that's that scenario of this over here facing you, face to face, vis-a-vis, right? This face-to-face scenario is what you constantly need to be on the lookout for. There's just the discomfort induced by a face-to-face encounter. Okay, face-to-face with, a creature or a scenario, just any kind of thing. You got this thing out there that's now facing you, which is making you feel uncomfortable, or seems to be making you feel uncomfortable. There's your affrontedness. That's what you're looking for. All right, and of course, if there is a threatening situation, like a dog is growling at you and it doesn't have a leash, that is also affrontedness. That's the more obvious kind of affrontedness, where the dog is in your face and you're looking at the dog. Okay, and now you have the fear reaction. The fear demon is going to come into your circle, take you over, and make you do something, fight or run away. Okay, and then you have, if you're a magical adept, you have some say over that. You can say, yeah, I think let's go along with this fear response. Let's see how much strength it can give me, so I can run and jump over that fence. Or you can do something clever, and pretty much. Whistle at the dog or something to try to see if you can trigger some of its training. I don't know. But then you have to have your wits about you to do that. And if the stress response takes you over, you won't have your wits about you. And so what you see here is a scenario I presented before, where the magician sits inside his magic circle, or he's meditating, right? And the affronting scenario is imagined outside of his magic circle, in its own circle. And this illusion of the gap between you and it is the primary thing that your nervous system is using to create that discomfort that you feel. All right. So why would you be on the lookout for affrontedness? Basically so that when the fear response arises, you can investigate that fear response. You can make meaning out of it, okay? It's some kind of an impulse, and it has imagery associated with it, like a snake, or fangs and horns, or curvy voluptuousness, or something like that. The imagery that's associated with it is now that's causing the discomfort, the intense hunger for something, or the intense fear response that you're getting. And your ability to see how that image is programmed into the human collective unconscious, let's say, how that's gotten in there, you can explore where it comes from. So each time it comes up, you're like, oh, there it is again. And the more aware of these impulses you become, the less likely they are able to take you over, because your awareness can freeze them in their tracks. There is an example from Eastern traditions. I think it's probably from Tibetan Buddhism. I'm not really sure. Possibly Tantric Shaivism. It's Vajrayogini, I think, is was a famous woman adept who gave a method for staying alert while meditating, watching for thoughts as they pop up. Okay, a thought is really nothing other than a subject-object relationship. Okay, and a subject-object relationship consists of you, the subject, looking at something out there, the object, that is either enticing you or threatening you. Notice how whenever you open your eyes and look out into the world, that stress response is slightly kicked on already, waiting for something to make you feel inadequate, like you need it and need to go get it, or making you feel threatened, as though that's a threat, I need to do something about this. Okay, so anytime you're observing anything out there in the world, that stress response is ready to kick in. It's already slightly kicking in by just you looking out there. Okay, this is why we close our eyes to relax, so that sort of the external stimuli begin to diminish, and then the stress response can sort of diminish and go down. Okay, and of course the one of the cool goals of meditation is to basically be able to walk around not triggered into a stress response by anything at all. Okay, all these kinds of instincts are still operative, and they do flare up and say, uh-oh, should we react with the stress response? And you're like, no, I think we're okay. You have control, right? Yeah, the affrontedness. Now, remember, when you're scanning for the affrontedness, as you go throughout your daily work or whatever you're doing, you're constantly presented with affrontedness. Okay, but anytime that affrontedness intensifies, as this is a me versus it scenario that's really strong, your attention should automatically be drawn to that, and see the illusory nature of it. See that, is that thing really out to get me? It's like, no, but my stress response is interpreting the situation as though that thing out there is out to get me. Okay, so if I walk around the house and I stub my toe on a door, stress response kicks in because of the pain. It doesn't have to, by the way, but habitually I stress out because of pain, right? I might turn around and punch the door because of the door. My stress response has programmed me to assume that the door is out to get me. The door did it, so I'm going to hit the door back, right? Which is really absurd, but hey, that's what we do. That's why when we get mad, we take our frustrations out on physical objects, because the stress response reinterprets physical objects around us as threats when they are not threats. This is how dumb the stress response makes you, okay? And the nice thing is, the more you work with that subject-object relationship to see how the stress response is triggered, the less it controls you. Okay, all the triggers are still there, but now you have control over whether they take you over or not. This is a very real thing. And it is a means of basically achieving a state where you're not, I don't want to say you're not afraid of anything, but it's more like you cannot be taken over by the fear of anything. And that's why in the Golden Dawn Neophyte ceremony, they say fear is failure and the forerunner of failure. Okay, fear is, in other words, if the fear response takes you over, you have failed. You have allowed the demon into your magic circle and let it take you over. And whereas the appropriate response as the adept is your awareness will turn toward the demon and freeze it in its tracks. Okay, and then notice it for what it is, a primordial fear that's being triggered by some kind of prehistoric scenario, possibly. And you know how that thing has arisen. Not only that, but you have compassion for it. It's like, oh, I understand why you want me to do this, because you're trying to protect me. I really appreciate you flaring to life like that and trying to take me over to protect me. And I see why you have evolved to do that. But this is not a situation that requires that response. Some people might say this doesn't seem rational or even feasible, okay? But you have to remember that in martial arts, the reason a Kung Fu master is so deadly is because he doesn't get angry. And so he can evenly, calculatedly defeat you. Even spontaneously do it, because his brain stays completely awake, and he can outmaneuver you, and he can predict your next move easily. You can't do that because you're mad, you're angry, or you're hurt, right? And of course, if a fighter is really good with martial arts, but then he takes a hit, and then he hasn't mastered the pain response, the stress response kicks in regard to the pain, and then dumbs him down. And then if he gets angry or upset because of the pain, his brain gets dumbed down, and he cannot fight in the same way anymore, and he's much more easily defeated then. Okay, so one of the quickest ways to take somebody out is to make sure they're angry or hurt, so that the stress response kicks in and they cannot fight intelligently anymore. Intelligently is not quite the right word. They don't have full access to all of their senses, the full bandwidth of experience. Okay. Yeah, the stress response makes you really dumb in many regards. It also dumbs down what you're able to see around you. There's many things that are automatically tuned out because the stress response is so simplifying. So obviously, the reason why the word affrontedness is difficult for people to understand is because it covers so many different kinds of scenarios. Okay, so many people, the easiest one to think of is anything that is a threat can trigger the stress response, okay, and then trigger the demon to rise, let's say, right? But also things that are desire impulses. They appear, they make you feel inadequate, like you need something. That's also a stress response. Okay, and so that is also a sense of affrontedness that you need to be on the lookout for. Okay. Oh, I see that guy has just trimmed his beard using this new product, and the girl's jumping into his arms. Oh, I guess I need to do that to my beard too. That is a stress response. They're trying to make you feel like it's deliberately prodding you to feel like you can't get the girl unless you trim your beard just like this. All right. So and notice how a single word like affrontedness, once you master that word, you can walk around and use it like a word of power. It's like, what am I looking for again? There's the affrontedness again. This is what should be alerting me to be on the lookout for some kind of impulse that's going to try and take over my behavior. Any scenario of affrontedness is going to do that, okay? So hopefully this word, once you master it, it's like a word of power. It's a secret word of power for you, right? You can then work through your demons much faster and achieve enlightenment faster. Because the more you get through these fears and desire scenarios that make you unconscious, the more conscious you become, the more awake you become, and the more free of unconscious impulses you become. Imagine what it's like to be free of all those nagging impulses that are trying to get you to do something. Wouldn't that be nice? All right, well, until next time.